think that there's a whole other podcast episode where I could go into the damage that the YouTuber community is doing, and the influencer community outside of video games is doing to games and the discourse within games and really intelligent kind of conversation and critical discourse about games, as well as it's this kind of the rise of that, and then the crumbling of traditional media and a place for really talented, well-educated, experienced games journalists and critics being able to have a place on a forum for that. But one of the things about YouTube is, interestingly, which is where most people actually get their games information from these days and find out about games, is that YouTubers are essentially like independent contractors or sole employees, entrepreneurs who are just proxies for an algorithm, because they need to do what the algorithm on YouTube is actually going to, what's going to feed the algorithm on YouTube. So that's when you get, and now we're in the social media side of things, because now we're moving into that area, right? YouTube is its own kind of social media platform in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so now we're getting into that, like, okay, well, incendiary takes and hyperbolic presentation and stretching the truth, or fast and hard takes as opposed to considered editorial, is really what's going to win the day in those areas. And it's not, having a storied history in game development or journalism, right, or actually, and so then that's feeding into the Steam algorithm or what people are buying on consoles or whatever, is this whole community of folks who are, and I mean, like, what else are they going to do? They're these are just normal people who are like trying to make a go of it like everyone else. They create a YouTube channel because they love video games, and then they're trying to just see those numbers go up as much as they possibly can, because it's putting dinner on their table every night. And the only option that they have to do is to just jump when the algorithm says jump.
This is interesting too, because that also affects, I did a couple of reacts, one of which I put on YouTube to a games journalist YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this take? Like, but again, looked at through this lens, what was it? Well, it was a take almost curated to get likes and views and these sorts of things. And so now, as you see the consolidation of where the consumer gets their information, it doesn't just impact those content creators who are, Potato McWhiskey talking about strategy games or Civilization or whatever. It's also impacting anybody else who's posting content on YouTube, your IGNs or whoever else, right? Anybody that's going to go onto YouTube with content. And it's interesting because now I was going to say something, which is, that's consolidation of revenue into fewer companies over time, and the stability of games, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, World of Tanks, World of Warcraft, these games aren't going anywhere.
No. And almost everyone you mentioned there is over 10 years old as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Fortnite's probably one of the younger ones, and isn't that just a weird thing to think about? Yeah. But they've been out for a long time, and they're bringing in money, and that's good because it creates these little pockets of stability. But it's also like, well, wait a minute, what's the long-term consequence of that? And as you, like you were saying, as the revenue is funneling into fewer and fewer people, those organizations are able to get bigger. But as they get bigger, one of the endless critiques of VCs and publishers, and sometimes this is fair and sometimes it isn't, is that they get disconnected from the game and they become metrics chasers.
Yeah.
They become the people who are just like, look, this is a business. I'm looking at ROI, and that from a lens, they're absolutely correct. Simultaneously, to your point around the Apple Arcade, so what we need is engagement. Yep. And so if you're building a game that might sell really well but isn't going to cause long-term revenue, why would I be interested? And you saw this massively in the sort of post-2020 into like up to 2022 as VCs just threw money because everybody started realizing, holy cow, if I can make a game as a service that can sustain, I can sustain a company and a profit for such a long period of time. And so I look at all that and I go, there's that further drives the tippy top of those organizations, as they become larger with the more revenue that they're getting and the endless expansion of them and the eating more and more of the ecosystem, further and further away from game dev. And it's hard to bridge that gap. And I don't say, like, I'm not someone who just goes and, like, I just want to bang on publishers because I think, it's all the publishers' fault. That's not it. But it is to say, like, we're all responding to this inside the system. You thinking about that centralization of distribution, even the centralization of distribution of the media that the players get information from, all of these things are happening simultaneously, and all of it pushes us away from a world where we get to actually sit down and go, one of the most important assets a company has is its culture. Because a culture is the key. Like, this was that interview I did with someone around culture. Culture has a really positive impact on revenue over time. If you look at, like, a 5-year window, who's looking at a 5-year window right now? And this even ties into the geopolitical environment. I was seeing an economist say that, like, look, even if you're trying to play the geopolitical game in some way, the problem is that because you set the rules and people can't know what to expect, when people can't know what to expect, they hold. They hold their cards. They withdraw from the market because they're like, well, what's going to happen next? I want to be ready, but I also need to be safe. And the way I'm safe is by holding on. And when you hold on in these sorts of markets, it's very bad. It's the extraction of the revenue source. It's the extraction of the funding of what might be those games. All of this, I think, happening at the same time, I wonder if we will lose that idea of, like you said, or is it that, like, a multi-game deal would be, hey, that's something like that is the way out. But that's an even bigger risk I think it's a smaller risk for the VC. I think they perceive it as a bigger risk.
And that comes from the contradiction of our medium being a commercially creative, hit-driven, product-centric output, but the input is a multi-term investment in technological and cultural institutional knowledge and collaborative sort of, mojo, secret sauce, right? And that contradiction, and it also, like, you can put it on a bunch of metrics. You can, those suits or VC suits that you're talking about, those sort of mythical men, if we can put a little icon on them up the top of that chart that you're talking about, that are just looking for that output. They're not connected to kids like the, indie kids, like the Arcane kids and their beautiful manifesto and them making games that only would ever exist on a Dreamcast, and that kind of, and them working together collectively, that then creates Tattletale and Neon White and, Donut County and, like, all these other games, right? That then go on to influence a bunch of other people.
If you lead teams in game or software development and you're tired of wasteful and unreliable estimation, I've built an online course just for you. It's called Advanced Estimation for Game and Software Development, and it's a self-paced course with over 15 hours of content, real-world examples, and tools you can start using right away. Estimation doesn't have to be a morale-draining mess. Planning doesn't have to feel unrealistic and contrived. You can do better, and this course will help. Early access is now open with lifetime access and a big launch discount, but there's limited seats at this price point. Check it out at this URL or in the show notes below.